Welcome to the How to Die in Mexico podcast. We help immigrants of U.S. origin live better in Mexico by addressing end-of-life worries and fears through education, contemplation, and planning resources. I am your host, Sarah Mae Conway, author of the book How to Die in Mexico, and you can find me at dyinginmexico.com. In this episode, I speak with Samantha Elliott, a senior care consultant based in Puerto Vallarta. If you're wondering whether assisted living in Mexico is right for you or how to find the perfect senior care home for a loved one in Puerto Vallarta, Sam is the person to call first.
It's an exciting time in many ways. There's so many services now that will come in to the facility. Dentistry, x-rays, some very good specialists.
We discuss the challenges and benefits of moving to a facility versus receiving care in your home, and cover what you might not know you need to know about senior care in Mexico.
It's very complex working with expats here who don't have adequate health insurance and don't necessarily have credit cards, and you're in the accident and emergency and you're trying to advocate, and basically they're in the emergency about to be assessed, and it's like, this is the quote, who's paying and where's the money, and you're like scrambling to try and call family members. It's something that it's a position I've been in many times, and it's really a nightmare.
You can connect with Sam by visiting mexperience.com and clicking on Senior Care Provision.
And I loved your question about exciting things coming up. Yeah, I think it is exciting. I think that services are improving. I enjoy the creativity of it, and I enjoy, like most people do in their work, I enjoy when I know that I'm enhancing someone's life. Like, even if it's just a chocolate bar, and having your fringe trimmed because you can't see, and it's just it's all the details for me.
May this episode be of benefit to you, and if it is, I would greatly appreciate your support in the form of a like, a follow, or a 5-star review. Okay, well, welcome. Yeah, I thought it would be great if we just started with, because you're also an immigrant to Mexico, and if you would just want to share a little bit about where you're from and how you ended up living in Mexico.
Sure, that'd be my pleasure. So in 2007, I'd been living in London for 16 years, but Welsh, from a very small village in Wales. I came to do 3 months volunteer work in an orphanage here in Puerto Vallarta, with the intention of going back home, after 3 months and going to a different project elsewhere. And I'd been looking for somewhere to relocate. So that's how I found the place, is coming here to work in an orphanage for a while.
That's great. That's great.
I fell in
But
love.
3 months. It only took 3 months.
No, I think I knew within the first week or two, because I had been looking for somewhere else. I'd considered the Caribbean. I'd considered Morocco, Marrakesh. I'd been looking for about 3 or 4 years for somewhere to relocate, to be honest, out of London. So when I got here, I kind of figured very quickly, okay, I think this is it.
Yeah, that's great. And so I know, you were coming to be of service, and I know you were specifically in health services before moving to Mexico, but can you, maybe say a little bit about how you got back into health services in Mexico? Yeah.
Sure, no problem. So back in London, I was working for 10 years with young people within the care system. So that was governmental care homes. I think we call them group homes in the States, both private and local authority. I worked in a young offenders institution sessionally for many years with young men and young women, very serious criminals. And then lots of different other assignments I did, like children and families departments in social services. So that included monitoring foster placements and doing risk assessments and being that social worker who kind of knocks on the door and says, we've had an anonymous referral that's concerned about your child. And, I kind of look back and think, wow, that was pretty crazy going and knocking on people's doors. But that's what, I guess that's what needs to happen. So yeah, a little bit of everything over the 10 years, and it was great. I'd always wanted to work with young people in the care system. Felt like I did that to death. And then when I came here to Vallarta, I tried other things briefly because I picked up very quickly that there's not really the same infrastructure here. So I tried a few other things like real estate briefly, and then I went back into essentially what is the same kind of work, social services, but I went with the elder generation because I very quickly realized there's a lot of expats here who are aging, and the skills were completely and utterly transferable. I'll say, and maybe a little more later down the chat, about the skill set that I had from London with a certain client group that I knew to be very easily transferable to a different client group. So yeah, and I still use them to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, maybe say more about that now, like going from
Okay.
working with kids, to working with seniors and kind of yeah, like what is it that people need help with the most? Or yeah.
I think there's so many little factors. It's such an intricate piece of work in that I had done some work within private homes in London. But when I started working in private homes here, what I very quickly implemented is things like good recording. Like it doesn't matter how simple the system is, but a little book so that you can start recording not only staff hours so someone can do payroll, but it's just general organization, ensuring that the pills that were meant to be given were on track, making sure that you're tracking bowel movements, things like that, which can easily be lost, and a problem can happen if you're not on top of that. Making sure people are drinking enough liquids, huge, huge, huge with the elderly. And, the kind of things that I wanted to know, particularly over the years when I've been a care manager in these situations, is like, I don't want to know they drink orange juice. I want to know, how much? 2 sips? A quarter of a glass? So it's those kind of little details that I would always look at and identify, and constantly being trying to not just monitor but coach people to try and ensure that what needs to happen happens.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we're talking about bringing this type of structure to, the home care space? Are
Yeah.
we bringing this type of structure to assisted living spaces, or does that already exist there? Like, in what settings, do you find your services are needed the most?
So I'll give you a very quick overview of the three main services that I provide. And for many, many years, what I did was care work with the elderly, and a very unofficial kind of capacity for private clients in the community. And then I got into doing care management, which I did for many, many years in many different settings. And that included hospice cases as well sometimes. So I might be coordinating with the nurses because the clients don't speak Spanish, and doing payroll and just helping to oversee everything, being an emotional support person for the partner of someone who's passing. So many different things. But so care management is something I did a lot for many, many years. And to answer your question, yes, those skills are very important. Good organization, ensuring that, you're supporting the staff as well, and that you're instructing the staff and coaching the staff. And then, of course, there's the family support that comes in, and the marital issues that you have to navigate, and all of it. So many. So that that's those skills I certainly utilize and introduce into that situation. However, now that my second service that I developed quite a long time ago, which is doing advocacy work inside of the assisted living or elder homes here, there are systems in place. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But as a visiting advocate, there's only so much I can do. I mean, obviously, I'm not in a management position there, but do I try to lead by example in those situations? Absolutely. So over the years, I know that nurses have and people have watched me come and go. Doesn't mean that I know everything. Absolutely not. But there's lots that could be implemented and would improve the lives of the residents that isn't yet in place. But I have to be mindful that this is a process. I've put later down on my list that it's an exciting process if you look at it positively, in that the infrastructure is much more kind of coming about now than it was, for example, even 10 years ago. So that's, to me, that's exciting. I try to step into the gaps as best I can. So the advocacy service within the elder homes is something I'm very, very passionate about and I've been doing for a long time. And the third service I have up and running is how you found me. It's an online assessment that I do via a website called Mexperience. It's a very well respected and well established website that deals with all kinds of things related to expats. But I do an online assessment, which is it can often lead to further work, or I'll refer them to nurse agencies or elder homes. But it's really a very quick online assessment whereby I gather as much information as possible. And then I write a written report with very clear recommendations on the basis of my knowledge of nearly 30 years now. I think next year's 30 years of this kind of work. And yeah, families say they find it very helpful. That written report could also then be shared with an elder home, so they're not having to repeat all the information if they decide to move to a facility, or it can be shared with staff that they hire, or it can be shared with other family members when their father is in crisis, as an example. And then everyone can see, like, okay, this is someone who kind of knows the industry, and whether they agree or not, these are the recommendations that she's outlined for us. So it can be used, that report, for many different situations.
Yeah. And this online assessment, would you say you're more often doing this for expats that already live in Mexico, but now they find themselves like, uh-oh, it seems like I'm needing a little bit of assistance, or someone thinking, oh, dad is living in Mexico. He's been doing fine this whole time, but now things are there might be something going on. He could use more help. Or are you doing this for people that are thinking of moving to Mexico? Is it both? Like, what's
Both.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely both. It's a real mixed bag. It could be the individual themselves reaching out. It could be the husband or wife. Like you say, they might already be living here and have been here for many years. It could be a family member whose loved one lives here and they're very concerned because they live alone. But I've also worked with many, many families where, for example, the one I had at the end of last year, it was a guy in New York. His father had been living independently, doing really well in his 80s. Then he took a real nosedive. They had him in a very, very expensive facility. And I think the cost was less of an issue than how unhappy they were with the service they were getting for 14,000 US dollars a month. So I did an assessment with them. The son flew down within the week and I toured him around 3 different facilities. He chose one and then he came back around with dad about 2 weeks later and we had him here until he passed away. And we put again, it's not just me doing advocacy pieces of work. What I'm used to doing by now is, when I do this advocacy piece of work within a facility, because the cost is generally a third or thereabouts than it would be in Canada or the States, then you have that money freed up. So you can put in a visiting advocate like myself. I can pull in English speaking physiotherapist. I can pull in a male I wouldn't say, well, a colleague, another worker, because I don't hire people. I've never had a care agency and I don't care to run one. But I might pull in a carer that I've previously worked in who's a male. So a man would have then that male energy. So in that instance, that's what happened with the guy from New York. There was only 1 day a week he wasn't getting an English speaking visitor. I was there 3 days a week, overseeing everything and making sure everything was on track, feeding back to the family. And also then there was a male worker going in twice a week and then a physiotherapist 3 times a week as well. So yeah, I think my math's a little off, but there was, like, I think just 1 day a week that he wasn't seeing one of us 3 who were external to the elder home.
Yeah.
He also then had the 24-hour care of the nurses there. And I'm sure you know this already, Sarah. It's a point that I always highlight when I do assessments on people, is that you do need to bear in mind that most nursing teams, even inside huge international private hospitals, a lot of nurses do not speak very good English. So it's something that I really highlight when I do the assessments, amongst many other things like insurance, etc. But yeah, you have to bear that in mind. It could be very isolating if they don't make plans to have someone coming in and out and interacting with them if they're here and they're surrounded by people, albeit very caring, but also very busy. It's nice for them to have someone who speaks their own language and can talk about culture and poetry and how they met their husband and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kinda hearing, like, there's the benefit that you bring, and maybe especially in the home care setting of, like, having this structure, and so part of it is actually, like, improving, like, the physical care, but then there is this cultural benefit, like, um, where, perhaps if I'm coming from the US, I might have a different expectation of like what an assisted care place provides me. I might have a different expectation of like, um, I don't know, yeah, just like you're saying, like who am I going to spend my days talking to,
Right.
and all of this. And so it seems like you're really doing this work of like bridging this cultural gap also.
It's a good point.
Yeah, like, what as like someone from the US, when I'm thinking like, oh, I'll just move to assisted living in Mexico, like what don't I know about how different it is from an assisted living facility in the US, and like what do I need to prepare for?
Bearing in mind I've never worked with this client group in the West, that would not in Canada, US, or the UK. My sisters have, and not so of my cousins. But from what I know, I believe that most elder homes or assisted living homes in the West are a little bit more proactive with activities, for example. They might even have a bus where they take them out occasionally for an ice cream or to see the ocean. That's not really happening here. So that's one thing you have to bear in mind. Like, as an example, today I have several clients, as you'd expect in a facility. I was out with not young, sorry, a woman this morning who I've been working with and known for a couple of years. We just went out for a walk and I kind of trimmed her fringe by the ocean and we had like a chocolate bar and chatted, and her mental health is going downhill. Her Alzheimer's is becoming quite advanced and her mobility is becoming quite advanced. But at the moment, with a little bit of assistance from me, we're still getting out and about and looking at the ocean and doing some stuff. That's not going to be, generally speaking, it's not going to be provided by the establishment. It's not going to happen.
Mhm. And is this partly because, correct me if I'm wrong, like, if I'm turning to an assisted living facility in Mexico, it's probably more likely that I'm further advanced in my aging, in my lack of mobility, in my ill health. Like, is that true? Because it seems like a lot of people are just getting care at home, whether that's professional care or care from the family.
That's a super good question because from my observations, especially these last 10 years or so, there's a real mixed bag. There are no levels. Like some people will say, well, I only need assisted living. But in reality, all the facilities take everybody. So you'll have someone maybe who's still super articulate and is able to walk, but they've perhaps got a complex degenerative disease and their families want them somewhere safe. So they will have their own sets of needs, and they'll be mixing with people who are sat in wheelchairs and practically non-verbal, and people who are passing away, every week. So there's a real mixed bag, and it's quite hard for those people who are less advanced in the aging and dying process. So again, you have to be creative. I have clients who are bedridden and have been for 2 years, and I go in and I wash their face and I sing with them, and I have others that I take out for pizza and we try and get it up to some fun, and it's a very different. So you have to bear in mind that everyone's lumped together here. You don't have that infrastructure as you would in the States.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've heard, too, like, that especially without a separation of, like, who needs memory care and, like, you're saying, like, who might still be really sharp and could use some more, um, activity, yeah, and mental stimulation.
Right.
There is maybe not that separation, which can be quite hard on
Yeah.
for everybody.
And I must say, like, I've never worked in Ajijic in different parts of
Mhm.
Mexico where I know they have some really good facilities. And I can't say that that's the same I must say that I can't say that's the same for the whole of Mexico. You'd probably know that better than me, doing what you're doing and speaking to a variety of people. But that's been my experience in Vallarta, and I do work with the three main companies. There might be another one or two companies, but the three main companies that provide elder care services, I know them. I go there and I take people to do tours, and I work within them. I've worked within two of the major companies, some for many years, and yeah, so I've got a pretty good handle on what's available here.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and of course, like, one of the benefits, that we always hear about assisted facilities in Mexico is that they tend to be a lot smaller. Like, these are not places where there's, like, hundreds and hundreds
Not
of
hundreds.
patients, right?
No, not hundreds. The one I was in today that I work with within the most, that's a rough guess. I think they must probably have 60 there, though, I'd imagine. It's quite a large one. There are some that are smaller. There is one, for example, that I think only might have eight clients at any given time, and they got it goes without saying the nurse client ratio is much more favorable. Then you have others that people are really packed together. And sometimes, several to a room, and the nurse to client ratio is not fabulous. They do their best and they do a pretty good job. Everyone's clean, but you have to be realistic also. And yeah, and there's so many questions that are important to ask when you're touring these facilities, as they would be anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and one of the questions I think is, when I'm going to one of these facilities, have I basically signed myself up for palliative care, or um, are there some medical emergencies in which I would still be translated to a hospital? Like, um, what's the medical care in these facilities, and do I need an advocate for that, or an outside helper to take me to the hospital, or how does that work?
Another great question. Yeah, I would, and on a positive vein, the main facility that I work with mostly, they're great. There's so many services. Like I say, it's an exciting time in many ways. There's so many services now that will come in to the facility: dentistry, X-rays. People will bring in X-ray machines. Some very good specialists that'll come to the facility. Of course, blood draws, stuff like that's pretty basic, and then it'll get so with someone's elderly, often they'll bring the services into the facility and do all the checks they need. Of course, there's going to be occasions where they're going to strongly recommend a hospital stay, or but again, it depends on so many factors. Can the person afford a hospital stay? Is the person, where are you with that client? Are you trying to make them comfortable, or are you trying to prolong life? So there's a lot of factors, but it is a good question, and I would say that as much as possible, people are attended to within the facility.
Mhm.
But if they do need to go to hospital, just the second part of your question, I've certainly gone, followed an ambulance into a hospital, and followed someone who's going from the elder home into a hospital for a couple of nights. And I've kind of followed in my car and helped check them in and go through it's one of my biggest bugbears in everything that I do, is that it's very complex working with expats here who don't have adequate health insurance and don't necessarily have credit cards, and you're in the accident and emergency and you're trying to advocate, and basically they're in the emergency about to be assessed, and it's like, this is the quote, who's paying and where's the money, and you're like scrambling to try and call family members. It's something that it's a position I've been in many times, and it's really a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, and a really good place to suggest that people plan ahead because, yeah, like all of this, we're talking about this in large part, I think, because for a US citizen, it is so much less expensive to get this type of care in Mexico, medical
Yeah.
care and continuing care towards the end of life. And yet there's still obviously a cost to it, and yeah, like your US, Medicare is not gonna cover it, and so you either have to have private insurance, right, in Mexico, or yeah, have some space on a credit card to put down that deposit at the hospital, right?
But even if you have quite good full health coverage here with a reputable company, you need to really, really do your homework because often often they're going to still ask you for quite a hefty deposit, and then you're going to get in the position where you're going to go through the trying to reclaim the cost of that incident. So there are some hospitals who have arrangements, particular insurers. Again, you may well know this. I did work inside one of the big hospitals here for 2 years, part time as kind of a consultant with an expat program. But so I got to learn quite a bit about how it works. Still not my area of expertise, not even close. And insurance is such a complex subject. I try to stay away from it, but I saw that very clearly that unless your insurer has a very clear relationship with that hospital, often you are going to be expected to come up with a really large deposit before treatment commences.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not the case that because I've chosen to live in such and such assisted living facility that that type of medical care would be covered under my monthly expense, so to
Oh,
speak. Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
not. Rule of thumb, just to throw a number out there, for about 2,000 US dollars in Viata, it's a really rough estimate.
Mhm.
For about 2,000 US dollars, you're going to get 24-hour nurse stroke care aides available to you. You're going to be kept clean. There's going to be three very, very basic meals provided. But anything additional like medications, diapers, anything else, toiletries to some extent, they're going to be charged to you. And things like having your nails done, having a haircut. Again, some facilities probably differ ever so slightly, but again, you need to be clear about that. Like it's I've brought people in to do pedicures on clients many times, and I've paid privately because sometimes the nurses will and sometimes they won't
Mhm.
in some of the facilities. So you need to be mindful of all that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and still, for many people, that 2,000 plus price tag compared to what you're saying is of the 14,000 in New York City, I mean, which is not actually extraordinary, in terms of cost in the US. Yeah, it still makes a lot of sense for people to be looking at, coming to Mexico for end of life and
Yeah.
yeah, like, I feel like your role, is only going to, like, exponentially be needed, like, more and more and more over the next 10 years as more people, hit age in the US where they're going to need this type of care, and it's only getting more expensive.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way about that, or how do you already get a sense maybe things are changing, or has it always been like that?
No, I do get the sense that more and more people are coming. Like the gentleman who moved his dad here from New York, he's like, he was just so like, he said, I could fill these places, with my friends from New York. Like this is, and he did what I would encourage a lot of people to do. With all the money you save, please do think about putting in supplemental services. And that's not just me touting for business because I don't even want it anymore. But please do think about finding people who are English speaking to go and visit your loved one and keep an eye on them and chat to them. And please do think about bringing an English speaking physiotherapist and get someone to take them out if they can. It isn't going to cost a fortune, but it's going to really, really enhance their experience of living here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's this phenomenon in Mexico in general, like, where maybe not so much at some of the more expensive private hospitals, but even in the hospitals, it's, like, generally up to the family to bring in meals and bring in this type of care and sometimes even, like, change the bed sheets or whatever it
Yeah.
is, and I think that's really, like an unexpected reality for, US citizens to hear that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Absolutely.
so, yeah, like, this having a network on the ground in Mexico becomes, like, very, very important, so maybe I mean, I see people considering, like, I'm gonna move to Mexico with my parents. They're gonna go into assisted living. We're gonna live there nearby.
Yeah,
But
people do
yeah,
that.
all sorts of arrangements, but
Yeah.
having someone there.
People do that, they absolutely do, and yeah, it's you can be very creative. Another case just came to mind that I had a couple of years ago. Actually, I spoke to the gentleman's son. He's up in that Ajijic area now, but he has Lewy body dementia, which is quite complex. But a great guy, really well traveled, a great character, and he actually had the 24-hour facility. He had a team of nurses that will his son pulled in a team of nurses to be with him 24 hours a day, a one-on-one nurse. Plus then they had me, and they were still saving heaps of money. But because he really didn't want his dad falling and he wanted him to have that interaction because he had a very busy and intelligent mind, like we had some crazy services that were thrown at this man. And it meant that he had that because he didn't sleep very much either. So he had that 24-hour nurse care. And again, they didn't speak a great Spanish, but he still had that company. And again, just to give you an idea of the type of creative packages you can throw at people,
Mhm.
irrespective of their issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And are people throwing together these types of creative packages even as they're still in their homes? Like, would you recommend, like, let's if you have a home in Mexico, let's keep you in your home for as long as possible. Like, where's the line where I should actually leave home and go to a facility?
That's a really, really great question. And it's a question I try to support people in all the time. I've had the experience of, as I mentioned earlier, being a care manager and seeing people out right to the very end at home. Yeah, they might have bounced in and out of hospital, but I've had several cases over the years where we succeed in helping them to pass away in their own private home. Um, the only time sometimes you need to go either into hospital or in a facility is if things are really, really complicated and pain becomes unmanageable, things like that. Again, I have a cousin in London who ran an elder home for 25 years, a really high-end elder home. And when I'm really struggling, I'll contact her and say, "What do I do here? How do we do this?" But it's often possible to keep people at home. And again, it depends as well on money, because if it is more cost effective to be in assisted living because the costs are less. I have to help people do these calculations all the time. For example, when people come to me and they're like, "No, I really want to keep people at home." But when you're creeping up towards needing 24-hour care, perhaps because they're close to dying and you really need eyes on them 24 hours a day for whatever reason, then you do the math and you cannot compete with the cost in an elder home. So it's often a lot more cost effective. So again, it depends on your preference. It depends on what finances are available to you. So really quite a complex calculation.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
But
think
with
a lot of people don't consider, like, there's caring for the human being, but then if you're in your home, there's also caring for the home, and that can become extremely complicated as we age, just keeping forget about a yard and all of this, but just keeping, like, my own living space clean and,
yeah.
healthy. Yeah.
That's really easy. I started a new case on Monday, and like I'm just checking things out, and I'm probably going to manage a small team. But looking in the fridge, it's like, ooh, there's a lot of things in there that needed to go out, and dating things. Again, these are kind of tips, Sarah, that I picked up in working in children's homes. Years ago, you get a piece of masking tape and you date things, like especially when you have a lot of people coming in and out. You can't trust someone as they age to be throwing things out in a timely fashion. You have to be on top of labeling things and keeping things processed. But yeah, keeping up with the house. Again, creativity. Often you'll have a cleaning lady who is adored by everybody, who will start taking on more and more as things progress. And in fact, sometimes they're the best people to utilize because they're already known to the client. Like when you have clients that are perhaps introduced to me and there's a little bit of a resistance in the beginning, which often there is, it's like, how can we utilize the lady that's been working with them for 8 years, who's already in and out of the house? How can we make use of those and make sure that they're part of our team and they're respected and they're supported? Because again, they need also emotional support, as often they morph from just being someone who comes once or twice a week to clean. They often become a really integral part of the team.
Yeah, 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 this issue of, like, familiarity feels really important at end of life, and, we're not always, like, I think, wise enough to, like, gather that team around us before we need them so that we can be familiar and,
Right.
have someone familiar in our time of crisis, um, but yeah.
Another example I gave someone just in the last week as well, and again, it's pulled from my days of working with foster children, who often I would be helping to introduce them to new foster carers, or facilitate a move. So they're going from a foster carer they might have been with for many years because they're retiring or something, and they go into a new situation. It's just super important to, like, just be sensitive about the process. Like, I went to meet a gentleman couple like week before last, and then this week I had 2 hours with him on Monday, and he's a real sweetheart. And then there's another member of staff meeting him on Thursday, and then she'll do her first shift one-on-one with him next week as well. So it's about, as you would with a child, often there's, like, that just initial meeting, and then there's like a very short shift. And you just slowly introduce people, and just try and listen to people as well. And certainly listen to people if they're like, I do not like that person, do not ever bring them back. I mean, sometimes you just have to listen to that. It's their home, it's their area, it's their vibe. I've had people who I've managed for 4 years until the day they died, and I've taken staff and they're like, get that woman out of here, like, just get her out. I'm like, all right, and I could see their point.
Mhm, yeah.
They were being overbearing or something. There was one lady, I love doing little case studies and stories sometimes because they illustrate the point. There was a lady that had been a nurse, and she just came into this gentleman's house, and he was a real, big man physically and in terms of personality. And she came in trying to be kind of bossy on the first shift, and he's like, get her out of here. Like, who, like, she's trying to be matronly. And he was like, oh no, off you go.
Yeah, yeah, but that matters, and what, yeah, it matters, and how great that we have some matter of choice, like, at the end of our lives, like, you know, I hear so much about, like, the family members, like, all they want is safety, "Keep my loved one safe, keep my loved one safe," but then the aging person, all they want is autonomy, right? They want their
Yeah.
independence, they want to have their choices, and there's so much conflict when these 2 things come together.
I love riding those waves. Autonomy is a huge thing for me. Again, I worked with teenagers where they're fighting for autonomy. And then now I work with the older generation for many years, and they're losing their autonomy. But wherever possible, they have to be given it. Again, another really quick case study. The gentleman I just mentioned, took care of him for 4 years, huge personality. His psychiatrist was tweaking his medications because qu he was quite a management issue, at the best of times. But he was given a particular psychiatric med, and he said, I'm not taking that, Sam. It makes me feel goofy. I don't like how it makes me feel." So his family and the psychiatrist were trying to put pressure on me to spike him, to just kind of give them to him. And I like, A, he's too intelligent for that. And B, that's unethical. And where I come from, it's actually illegal. You can't just strip this man of his rights. He lives alone for 20 hours of the day. We only go there to support his life 4 hours a day. And then finally, the psychiatrist and the family all kind of hang their head, and I was very clear. I was like, "No, no, 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 no. He needs to be provided with another option. This is." I used to say to him, "You're king of your castle. I'm here to support you. I'm not here to take over. I'm not here to kind of tell you what to do. You're there to service people." I'm really clear about that.
Mhm. If only, yeah, if only we all could be so clear about that. Like, I'm just marveling here at, like, the expansiveness of your skill set and, like, what's really needed to be effective in this type of role. And I just really wish like more families would be having like, I hope families listen to these types of conversations and start having these conversations. And yeah, like how can we balance like safety and independence and autonomy, and how can we just meet all these moments with more compassion? Um, yeah.
I can share with you one of the techniques, and I'm very clear with everyone. I'm not a family therapist. I'm not a therapist. But certainly in the past, one of the things I've done is tried to work either it one-on-one with family members or have like a Zoom call like this or a group call to talk through the issues independent of the client, because you will have a lot of people pulling in opposite directions sometimes, or they'll be very, of course, concerned, but you will also have family members who are very controlling, very difficult. So you have to navigate all of that. And I've even taken family members and colleagues of mine to therapy sessions before now. And right at the end, I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about supervision of staff and get staff getting guidance and supervision. Another part of the infrastructure that is non-existent here, which I've tried to kind of play with over the years and implement. But I've taken, like I say, family wives of someone who's dying and also colleagues of mine to a therapist I know here in the city, and we've talked it out
Yeah.
because it gets really, really complex.
Yeah, that's so important. And do you help people do any type of end of life planning like apart from okay, we have your care situation taken care of, do you guide people through, what do you want to have happen when you die or as you're dying or what should we do with the body, et cetera, et cetera? Do you help guide people through
Sure,
that?
sure. Those conversations, yeah, are important. And I've, I don't want to oversimplify things because there's the legal side of things, which I try to pass it off to colleagues of mine who are good at governmental stuff. I just that kind of stuff isn't my deal. So the legal stuff aside, like advanced directives and power of attorney and all that stuff, I try to stay away from that, but more from the I guess social work side of things. Certainly, it's important to have conversations with people around what they do and don't want, and yeah, and try and be courageous with those conversations. I don't know if any of you. It's a Netflix documentary, and it helped me so much. I had two clients die very close together, long-term clients, about 4 years ago now. And there's a documentary called on Netflix called Endgame. And it's a guy called BJ Miller. I highly recommend that to anyone who's, interested in this area. He has a Zen hospice facility in San Francisco. And the way he speaks to people so matter-of-factly about the dying process was so inspirational to me because it's not that he lacks sensitivity. He has a TED TV talk as well. I adore this guy. He's just his manner in talking to people about the dying process was just it's very hard for me to even articulate what that meant to me because it's respectful, but it's unafraid. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's unafraid. It's a conversation that's unafraid. And I think sometimes that's what's needed, is not just with the family, but with the client, most importantly.
Yeah, and sometimes just to have one person in the room who's unafraid of starting the conversation can just, like, get everybody else to kind of let down some barriers a little bit, or they're grateful, like, they've been waiting for that, but they didn't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I have a memory of being with a colleague, and it was the day that a long-term client of ours died. I'm not saying I don't find it hard as well. I had a client very short term recently, and I had to go and talk to my therapist about it. It was a little hard. But yeah, I remember a colleague of mine getting a little panicky there on the last 24 hours. She said, "I think he's dying. I think he's dying." And I kind of pulled her gently and I said, I think he is too, and like just please try and be courageous and come in with a calm energy, and it's going to mean so much to him because he's going to feel it. We need for him not to feel afraid.
Mm,
So yeah, it's not easy though. It's hard.
yeah,
It is
yeah.
it is hard, but it is possible to die at home certainly, but only if only if it's appropriate. And again, doctor supervision, again, something I learned in the early days, Sarah. If you've got someone at home and they're ill and or perhaps dying, it's legally amongst apart from ethically, legally, you really, really need to be engaging with a doctor and having a doctor supervise them at home. That's just yeah, a no-brainer. That needs to happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really great advice. Yeah, what is on your list that we didn't get to, like similar to this great advice? Like, what is it that the expat, the immigrant to Mexico, the person that's thinking about moving down, like, what do I really need to know that I don't even know to ask already?
I love that question. I have remembered something very, very quickly as well that I'd like to mention, and that's dealing with private hospitals. Let me just have a quick look.
Yeah.
Dealing with private hospitals. I've really, really many times had people call me from private hospitals and their loved one is kind of getting held hostage, Sarah. You
Mm.
know, I've received calls, and again, I would encourage people to reach out to me. You know, sometimes it'll be my husband's sure he's dying. We want out. We want him to die at home, or we can't afford to keep him in the hospital. Help. And again, it'll be sometimes I'll say, here's the number of the elder home, the elder facility, if it's most appropriate that he's taken somewhere with a team of nurses. Here's the number of an independent ambulance that will come and pick you up, that will be inexpensive, and you don't need to negotiate with the hospital their transport services. Like, so again, anyone who's ever in a position where they're in a hospital and they really want to transport their loved ones, it's quite common for people to feel stuck.
Yeah, I've heard this a lot too in terms of reasons to have an advance directive. That if you aren't taken to the hospital towards end of life with like a very clear legal document and a person that's going to speak up and say, no, 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 they have this legal document. That there is this issue of in the private hospital, like they're going to keep you there. Yeah. And so when you're getting these like panicked phone calls, are these people that have already been working with you? Are these people that are just like finding your number and just
Sometimes
looking for
someone
help?
literally hands them my number and says, call this
Mhm.
woman. I had one recently. That was the short term piece of work I mentioned that I did recently. There was a lady in the hospital. I didn't know her. Son called me late, like, help, we're in this hospital. It was an overdose, and it was, brain tumor and very complex. They were trying to hold on to her and do chemotherapy on her.
Mm.
And he's like, they're bankrupting us. Like, what do I do? And again, it's so simple. I didn't even, sometimes I've physically gone there and been present with them while the doctor comes round and negotiates an exit plan and say, look, we have teams of nurses that can attend to this person at home. But this time I literally gave them two numbers. I gave them the elder home number and I gave them the number of the independent ambulance. And he had his mum out of there and into that elder home within 24 hours, and she passed away 2 weeks later, and I was a little bit involved, and all her friends were able to go and visit her at the elder home. She had so many friends, and yeah, it was much cheaper, and it was much more pleasant for everyone as well to be in that setting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, it's to me it's like, okay, well, I would love to have that information ahead of time of like having some type of emergency plan, even if I'm
Yeah.
not near end of life, like there's accidents
Mm.
happen all the time. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and knowing like here, yeah, if for whatever reason I'm don't want the care that's being offered, here's the exit plan, the transportation, the yeah, another place where I can be taken to if it's not back home.
Right, you're quite right. Emergency planning is huge. It's always on my list of recommendations when I do the assessment. It can be such simple stuff. It's like emergency planning to me looks like, which hospital would you like to go to? If someone falls and hits their head, it's like, you can't ask them, like, do you have a preference? Which hospital? Is there a credit card at hand? Who's your emergency contact? What's the address of where you're working? I mean, like in a panic, I've been in places where you need to ensure, like, when I talk about good record keeping, you have an information sheet you should on the front of any folder that any care worker is filling out daily. And on the front of the sheet, it will be all of that. It will be the medication list that you can grab that folder and run with. If someone's unconscious, you even need to know the address so that you can tell the ambulance to come. Like if you've just recently been hired, you're going to be like, what's the effing address? Like, it's just basic organization. So yeah, what hospital, how you're gonna pay, who's the first person to inform, um, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good advice. Really good advice because we don't ever know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a little look at my list, but the one that I added since we initially spoke, money management, massive hot potato. Money management. It doesn't matter if someone's still living at home and where they are cognitively, it doesn't matter. If you're a care worker, you have a duty to manage that whole situation very, very, very carefully. And again, I pulled that from my experience in London. Like, and again, it doesn't matter if you're managing them in a private home or you're servicing somebody in an elder home and taking them out and or taking them pizza or buying them their favorite chocolate to take into them. You need to establish a basic petty cash system. That's one thing. And again, I'm always, if anyone ever wanted to happily I'd show them. I'm so old school. I'm such an old hippie social worker. You can put it on an Excel spreadsheet or use whatever app you want. I just got a little book and it's like in, out, details, balance, and then it's so basic. But also what I would say is ensure that that's always shared with at least one other person apart from your client, given that a lot of people will start to have cognitive issues as they get older. It protects the client and it protects you as a care worker. So I would always send screenshots to, say, the daughter or the son who's an accountant, or preferably someone with power of attorney and or family. And if not, maybe one of their closest friends. You could say, hey, can you help oversee this? That's one tip, is just to have a basic money system that's transparent. And also things like protecting yourself. I would never personally, if someone handed me their bank card and said, here's my PIN number, go and draw me out money. There's kind of no paper trail. That's not how I do things. I might work with checks and I'll get them to sign off the money every single time I hand it to them. I I can't stress enough how important this is. I can't tell you how many times it's happened again with my new client. Hundreds of thousands of pesos. We're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars. I've seen people have stolen from them here, from having care workers who are inexperienced. They haven't come with references, but even some of them who work for nurse agencies. Thefts amongst this client group, huge problem.
Mhm.
You have to be clever. And I let go of a cleaning lady once because she stole 100 pesos. What is that? $5?
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row. I had my system, me and my colleagues, the system was airtight. This lady was cleaning in the condo, a beautiful, very large condo, and 100 pesos went missing. I said, okay, maybe it was a mistake amongst me and my colleagues. Next week, it's not a big amount. It's not the point. We have our system. It's airtight. So I let her go. I didn't make a big deal of it, but she was let go.
Yeah. Yeah, and, speaking of that, we hear these stories about, like, how hard it is to let somebody go or, like, all just the I mean, I know you're not, like, an HR expert or a lawyer, but, like, just about, like, do I need to meet with an expert or a lawyer if I am hiring and firing household staff? Like, how does that work?
I would encourage you to check it out. I have had an accountant. I've changed accountants now, but I had an accountant who was also an employment lawyer and a great guy. And I went through that with him many years ago. Again, I'd encourage you to check it out yourself. But in layman's terms, he certainly instructed that if you have casual staff that are working, I think it's like 15 hours a week or less, then it shouldn't be as much of an issue. So yeah, and I try to set it up where, for me, the family are hiring, so I try to put the responsibility on the family. and I'm managing. So I try to kind of separate those two things. Like I'm managing the situation, but I'm not hiring. I'm just managing what happens there. So I've kind of got away with that, I guess. And not got away with it, it's just how I've tried to set it up. It's very casual. But yeah, of course I'm fully registered with children and adults in any kind of setting, hospital, elder home, private homes, yeah, and pay taxes and all that kind of stuff. And but a lot of care workers don't, and there's nothing fundamentally wrong with that. There's a lot of unofficial care workers who work in the city and have done for decades, and there's all kinds of private arrangements, that people make in their own homes, and it is what it is. I actually ran when I worked with my very first elderly client for 3 years, and I left that situation over an ethical issue that I was really uncomfortable with. I created actually a small group of carers. At the time, I wasn't fully registered, and I actually created a small group of carers who met once a month, once every 2 months for quite a many years. And we'd talk about pricing, how we'd get our hourly rate up because people were being taken advantage of here who might come with a pretty good skill set, but people were still wanting to pay them 50 pesos an hour. I mean, and you're a Westerner who might have been a nurse one day in the past. So there was pricing, there was ethical issues that we were coming up against and things like that, and general emotional support. So, and I have a different professionals group now that me and a friend of mine, Maureen Priestley, she's a psychologist. We meet up periodically. That's got all kinds of people who own physiotherapists, establishments, therapists, social workers. We all try and talk, apart from having a good time, we all try and talk about stuff like that sometimes as well, and network.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really important, like, that I'm hearing you say, like, in terms of protecting yourself, it's like, "Oh, I have an accountant and a lawyer, but I also have this, like, a therapist and a network of business professionals, and I'm meeting regularly with other people who are doing this kind of work," and it's so important to yeah.
The group I used to run, that kind of went by the wayside a long time ago. But I would say that I'm really passionate about I still don't think myself I get enough professional supervision. Luckily, I have an amazing therapist who he's so experienced as a PhD, has worked in psychiatric units for many years, and I can't even tell you how qualified he is to give professional supervision. So I lean on him when I need it. But again, for anyone out there who happens to listen to this who is working in the industry, I would really encourage you to try your best to identify someone that you can really talk about these issues with, because it can be very isolating, particularly doing the kind of role I do. And I know that I'm not alone. There's a lot of people out there who are doing care work or just fall into it, or have done care work all their lives. It doesn't matter if you're in these kind of complex situations. You really owe it to yourself and to the clients to try and get some support around some when things get sticky.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking too about, like, how isolating and difficult and challenging it is to be a non-professional caregiver who just, maybe I moved to Mexico with my husband and suddenly he needs so much more care and it's falling to me like how I mean you're in Puerto Vallarta, you're in a big city, there's all these great professionals, but like how do I find you? How do I find people like you? Like
Yeah.
where do I even begin if I find myself in that situation where I just really, really need help? I cannot be the 24/7
Yeah.
caregiver.
Well, people are welcome to contact me often through the Experience website, or if you wanted to pass on my information to anyone, that would be perfectly fine. I often refer out. It might just be I have a quick chat with someone and say, here's a nurse agency, here's the name of the elder home. I'll just give out numbers and they'll run with it. So yeah, or they could do an assessment or have a more lengthy consult. Yeah. And then there's lots of people. I'm very happy to share information about psychologists and people. There's some great new services coming up as well. There's clinics now. There's CanMex. There's so many different new services coming out. People a lot of people over the years have come and gone. They've tried to set up hospice services here, and then they've kind of folded and gone away, and I've been so upset. And there's a lot of people who have come and gone, but there are some people who are coming and are staying and are really doing well, who have independent health clinics so that are really ethical and not caught up in the machine of the private hospitals. There's a lot of services up and coming that it's exciting for me anyway, because I'm enjoying working with them and bouncing off them with and working with people who are more forward thinking, and it's good. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, it's great to hear that people are seeing the need and they're filling it in creative and, like you said, ethical ways.
Yeah, I think it is exciting. I think that services are improving. I enjoy the creativity of it, and I enjoy, like most people do in their work. I enjoy when I know that I'm enhancing someone's life. Like, even if it's just a chocolate bar, even if it's just a chocolate bar and having your fringe trimmed because you can't see, and God knows when the hairdresser's coming around the elder home next. It's just it's all the details for me. It's those little details that really count.
Yeah.
It's the same for all the other care providers as well, and a pot of flowers on the windowsill in a place that they can actually see if they're bedridden, a little fresh posy of flowers. It's just, to me, the details are really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And yeah, I wish there were 1,000 more of you in every state of Mexico. And yeah, this has been really great advice and I think really um, useful information for people as they're thinking about planning, whether it's for themselves, whether it's for their parents.
I
Yeah,
have one request as well. I mean, given that you're speaking to so many people similar to myself around Mexico, if there are other people that are open to doing like a working committee or like a network where we can talk and compare notes on how we're working with clients in different communities, I would be so into that. I would ask that anyone you interact with or who listens to this, if they want to reach out to me or they want to put a small group together so that we can network and brainstorm, then I think that would be really beneficial.
yeah, yeah. I think that that's really needed, and I think it's going to be of interest to people. I know, like even when I was first starting this project, a lot of people who are doing this type of patient advocacy or care services, like in the US, were contacting me and they're like, is there a need for this in Mexico? Because people, yeah, are looking to move. They want to come to Mexico. They are like, what am I going to do when I get there? Where's the need? Can I earn money? Like, can I get my residency, start a little business? And there is a huge need for, English speaking patient advocates, assistants, consultants, whatever it is we're calling ourselves. Uh, so, yeah, I think, and I'm sure that there's people doing this that, would be happy.
I do have people like that. I do have people reaching out to me like that sometimes, and I always keep their names on file, and connect them with people if I can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Lots to think about. But yeah, it's been really enjoyable speaking to you though, and I wish you well with, what you're doing. I love your website.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so
Good
much
luck, Sarah.
for your time, for all the great information, and we'll be in touch for sure.
Yeah, anytime.
Nowhere to come.
Bye.
All
Good
right,
luck.
bye-bye.
Lovely to meet you. Bye, hon.
You too.
Bye-bye.